I was struck by a couple of things as we started out this morning. The screensaver, the countdown, whatever you want to call it, showed Bethlehem and the star and a lyric from a Christmas carol. I don't remember which one it was. But it struck me how it does sort of apply to what I'm going to speak about today, in that, as we all know, Jesus' life was the fulfillment of a boatload of prophecies and promises. And that's what this season to me is all about. And as many people have mentioned already today, and it's something that I'm going to address as well, today's world, there are prophecies in the offing, wars and rumors of wars and everything else, all of the unrest in the world today. Rick mentioned it during prayer. Greg mentioned it. Everybody's talking about it. And the last time I spoke, I spoke of the political unrest and the disagreement and discord and everything else within our country. And basically, the theme of what I want to talk about today is understanding. Understanding and empathy. And I think that's what we're really missing today. Okay, so without further ado, I'll try to, my first slide, is it possible to understand everyone in a deep and meaningful level? That's what most people think. It's impossible to do it. And why is that? Some people grow up as abused children. They live in impossible circumstances, and their greatest influence is evil. Whereas other of us lucky enough to be raised in a loving family, nurtured throughout our lives, how could we possibly, if that's the type we are, understand someone in that other environment? I know for me, when I watch the nightly news, I'm at a loss. I do not understand. I'm at a loss to understand how a group of people can go into a community and murder children. And I just don't understand how that's possible. I don't understand how people can't see that this is wrong, that this is evil. But as a matter of fact, so many people seem to be advocating for it and saying this is exactly what is needed. And I don't get that. I find it hard to understand. Yeah. But we see it unfolding, and you can go to the next slide. I mean, look at this devastation and children walking through that. It's amazing to me. The next slide is another picture. And look at them. They feel they're right. They feel they're in the right. And okay, how are they different? How can I understand these people when it's completely alien to me? As well as I understand my children and my grandchildren, who are very loving and giving people and try their best to do what's best for their communities. The thing is, actions are different than motivations. Okay? What do you think motivates people like this? Is it hatred, though? Greed, fear, selfishness. Yeah, those are all types of motives. However, While behaviors are vastly different, our motivations can be very similar. What do these people want? They believe, both groups that I was talking about, my children and grandchildren, and these people here, they want, and in fact, they need to earn the love and respect of their loved ones and believe that their actions are in the best interest of their communities. So you see, we show it in different ways. Our behaviors are vastly different, but the motivations are strikingly similar. So that shows that we have a commonality. It shows that there is hope if we can reach through and find common grounds with other people. But so many of us are adverse to doing that. Now I'm going to get into teaching a little bit of what I used to teach for the United States Army. Next slide, please. Believe it or not, there are 27 basic motivations for people. This is a list of the 27. Am I going to go through those individually? No, I'm not. That would be worthless at this point. Now, how can you say there's only 27 motivations? What's to say there isn't 895? Nothing. It is quite possible. But basically what you are, this is a generally accepted list of basic motivations. You can come up with a lot more of them if you look at one and you come up with subsets within that. So it's basically an exploded version of the same list. Okay? Next slide, please. How many of you have ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of need? Okay, that's what this is here. And this is something I've always loved. Basically, what this says is every human being has needs, situational needs. And by situational, I mean that they change according to the circumstances in your life at the moment. Okay, Maslow says that our basic need, the one we always start with, is our physiological needs, and that is air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, that type of thing. As long as those needs are deficient, we can't function above that level. Does that make sense to you? If you can't breathe, that is going to be your primary thing to worry about. I need breath. I need food. Okay? Once you have taken care of those needs, then you can move on to the next level. Safety needs, personal security, employment. You don't have a job, whatever. Resources, health, and property. That's the next level need that you need to secure before you can move ahead. Love and belonging is above that, and that's when you've finally gotten what you absolutely must have. You've gotten what you really need. Now you can begin to develop friendships and intimacy, family, and a sense of connection, because believe it or not, everybody needs a sense of connection. That's more or less what we were just talking about with the difference between my family and the terrorists. Okay? Esteem comes after that. Once you have developed friendships, love and belonging and everything else, then you get to the esteem needs. And those include your respect of others, your self-esteem, your status, recognition, all of those things. Beyond that, self-actualization, the desire to become the most that one can be. Now, what do you think happens if you are a self-actualized person? If you are striving to, as the Army used to say, be all you can be, what do you think happens if you lose your job? Are you functioning at the self-actualization level anymore? Absolutely not. You drop back to safety needs. And until that's satisfied, you can't build up again from there. Make sense? Okay. So this was, by the way, 1943, Abraham Maslow published a paper of the theory of human motivation, and that's what this is. I'm going to condense these, because a lot of people have done this recently, into 3 basic things. Next slide, please. So here we start out with physical survival. We all need food, air, water. Relational. How to balance our self-interests with those of our community and the world. We want to receive care. We want to receive understanding and love. But we also want to give that and share it with other people. Agreed? And then we have aspirational or spiritual needs. We all want to grow. We all want to attain goals, learn new things and skills, and experience adventure. That's kind of getting into self-actualization and things like that. Okay? So something that we need to sort of consider is that all human behavior, no matter how horrific or bizarre or giving or loving or mundane even, is spawned by one of the 27 motivations that we spoke of, or these 3 groups. Everything falls in. There is a reason for everything we do. So understanding what really matters to any given person at any given time is revealed by which of these common motives are currently driving their behaviors. I should turn off my phone, shouldn't I? Charlie says, love my good and plenty. Okay. Oh, that's the next slide, actually, if you want to. Oh, there it is. Understanding what really matters to a person at any given moment is revealed by which of these common motives are currently driving their behaviors. Okay. Now I'm going to get into some personal anecdotes. A recurring, let's call it, discussion that Diane and I have is how much time I spend in the basement on my computer or working on one project or another, or why am I often coming home late from work? Well, you see, I am a perfectionist. I cannot let something go if I think I can do it better. It drives me crazy. It drives everyone I know crazy. But it's like those of you that have seen one of my annual Christmas cards, which unfortunately I can't do this year. I work for hours and hours and hours, and the people see these things and they say, that's great. And I look at it and I go, yeah, but that needs to be a different color. This needs to be moved over here. And I've got hours and hours and hours of work left to do because it's not right. It's not just what I want it to be. Okay? I cannot let something go as long as I can think that it might be better. Or in the case of leaving my job, work, generally what I do, let's say at Michael's, is I open boxes and stock shelves, okay? And my boss will come up to me in the morning and he'll push out what we call a U-boat, because they have these big U-shaped things on each end. It's very similar to the carts that you see in a hotel when you check in and put all your suit. And he'll wheel out a couple of U-boats and say, this is what I want you to accomplish today. Get all this stuff put away in the right place and everything. Now, a lot of people, particularly, well, just a lot of people, they will work until their shift is over and say, well, couldn't finish, sorry. I have a hard time doing that because I know that my boss is depending on this stuff being done. So I have a hard time just saying, I can't do it. Or let's say that I did get it done, but I've got all this mess, all this empty cardboard and everything. I'm not going to leave that there for somebody else to clean up. I got to clean it up myself. So these are the reasons why we have these conversations. But the thing is when I'm so heavily focused on this, all of a sudden my gifts of communication go out the window because I don't talk. I just focus on what I'm doing. So that's not really fair, is it? And I realize that, but it's something that it's hard for me to control. And the other thing too, unfortunately, is I am also methodical, which basically means that I take much longer to do most things than most people. My dad used to call it slow. But I like doing things right. I can't stand not doing them any other way. Now, Diane sometimes struggles to understand that. She concludes, makes the decision that it's because I don't care about her. That's not the case at all. It's my issues, not hers. She can appreciate my need to do a good job, but she also needs to feel loved and respected. By the way, that's a great book, Love and Respect. Read it if you haven't. Where am I? Oh, and so when I am focused, my communication skills fly out the window. I already said that. I frequently don't tell her that I'm running late. And that's my bust. But if you want to understand others, know that the outside world matters to us only because we are trying to fulfill our own needs internally. And that's kind of selfish, isn't it? Human behavior can be confusing and very complex, but human motivation is relatively simple. As we discovered when we were talking about the terrorists, their motivation is easy to understand. It is our job as Christians to break out of that rather selfish mold, but thanks to original sin, we are all, after all, human beings. Punishment or revenge is often confused as a human need, but normal people, once again I say normal people are not specifically motivated by hurting other people, even Hamas. That isn't their primary motive there. If you can't identify something that gives another person pleasure, then you need to dig deeper to find their true motivations. Does that make sense? Yep. Revenge is pursued to fulfill another deeper need. Very often, that need is the need for understanding from other people. In other words, if they were saying something like, perhaps you will understand me if, perhaps you will understand how deeply you hurt me if you feel the pain yourself. And that's the real motive behind what they're doing, not a desire to destroy you or hurt you. Does that make sense? Okay. Think of people you know, and we all know them, unfortunately. Think of the people you know who refuse to let go of anger, the anger they feel towards a loved one. I know, I was telling the guys at men's group the other morning, my uncle, I loved my Uncle Bob. He was a great guy. He was funny. He was loving. But he didn't have chips on his shoulder. He had these massive boulders on his shoulder. And for one reason or another, my grandparents were lovely, loving people. But he, from his youth, was holding on to some things that he never could quite forgive them for. So they were always at an impasse for my entire life. I never really could understand it, particularly when I was younger. And so as a result, there was an awful lot of fellowship and companionship and everything we missed out on over the years as a result. And when my grandfather died, it practically destroyed my uncle. He was beside himself. He couldn't cope with everything that he missed out on over the course of his life. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long after that it started building up again, and he was still just as resistant with my grandmother until she died, and he went through the same thing. I don't understand that mentality. On an amusing side, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie Avalon. It's a great movie, but there's a scene where there's a guy in the family that's much the same way. They always run late for everything, and they're hosting Thanksgiving dinner at this guy's house, and the uncle shows up late. But everybody's waiting around, and the food's getting cold, and said, well, we'll just get started. They can join when they get here. So they cut the turkey. Everybody's eating when they come in, and the guy comes in and he looks around. He says, you cut the turkey? Come on, Ethel, we're leaving. And he leaves. That was my Uncle Bob, that was the way he lived his life. But it's terrible. It really is terrible. You miss so much. You miss so much. These people robbed themselves of the fellowship they could have enjoyed with that person for years. But people tend to avoid making the effort to understand others. I don't know why. It is hard to remain angry with someone when you understand why they do what they do, isn't it? I mean, you can be furious with somebody until you really understand what caused that, and then all of a sudden, you might not agree with them. That's fine. You might not agree with them, but it's hard to be literally angry with them because you understand them better. But that can it's difficult to do sometimes, going back to terrorism, for example. You might say, yes, I can understand their motivations, but I can't condone their actions. Absolutely not. Understanding someone is not condoning what they do. But understanding someone is the only way that we can find common ground and work out our differences. That's the only way to do it. We might, but people avoid making the effort to understand someone. And possibly some of the reasons for that is they don't want to forgive and forget, or it's one of the 7 deadly sins, pride thing gets in the way, or perhaps they're secretly afraid that they share part of the blame for the conflict to begin with. So those are reasons that people don't make the effort. Nonetheless, understanding others require us to swallow our pride and make the effort. But we have to choose to make the effort. Next slide, please. This is a quote from St. Augustine. It was pride that changed angels into devils. It is humility that makes men as angels. We have to swallow our pride. The concept of, let me make sure that I'm not lost again. The concept of walking a mile in someone else's shoes is a common construct in the English language and literature and things for many, many years. It illustrates a simple and easy to understand lesson. Before you judge another person, try to understand their situation. In other words, walk in their shoes. Contrary to popular belief, Jesus did not specifically teach that lesson. As a matter of fact, he says we shouldn't judge anyone, period. Nonetheless, the Bible is full of teachings about empathy. And that saying is very empathetic, wouldn't you agree? Walk a mile in another person's shoes. I remember teaching my 8th grade students one of my favorite books that I can't remember the title of, Atticus Finch, To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, he tells his kids all the time, walk a mile in another man's shoes. And okay, the illustration is Christian-like in that it celebrates the virtue of empathy. And whereas the Bible never directly addresses the word empathy, did you know that? The word empathy is, I can't find it anywhere. It is full of examples of it, along with understanding and compassion for others. Next slide, please. Colossians 3:12 through 14. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all of these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. I think that's very apropos. Next slide, please. And just another Philippians 4 through 5. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. So, in today's world, with all of the terrible things going on and everything, it wasn't too long ago that we had everyone going around saying, "What would Jesus do?" Do you think that Jesus would want us to condemn and turn our backs even on the Hamas terrorists? No. No, we need to try to find common ground, to understand one another, and to find peace in today's world, as difficult as it may be. Some practical steps into doing this. Everyone understands active listening. That's what we need to do. When someone speaks, listen to not just to respond, but to understand. Seek to grasp the emotions and perspectives in their words. Practice non-judgment. That's a very difficult thing to do. We all want to judge one another. But as I say, it's difficult to judge with understanding. So if you make the effort to understand, it's difficult to judge them. And remember that God tells us to not judge other people in any case. Cultivate compassion. It's kind of like a cancer. It grows from, if you give someone compassion, they're going to give you compassion in return. Reap what you sow, basically. And educate ourselves, learn about our differences, and try our best to understand one another. That's what God wants us to do. That's what Jesus does for us. Okay? That is basically what I wanted to tell you today. I hope it made sense.